Okay, everybody, welcome to part 2 of week 3. We're going to talk about reporting to supervising attorney. So, some preliminary logistics. I will be putting assignment 3, 4, and 5 on D2L. And so, with report to supervising attorney, I'll have brief written instructions, but basically, it's everything I'm talking about in these slides. I will be sending out a Google Doc to schedule conferences next week. If you're not one of my students, be on the lookout for D2L content and or emails from your LARC professor regarding assignments and scheduling. Okay, so report to supervising attorney. Preliminary points. Get a clear idea of what your assignment is. Was your assignment provided orally? So, that's pretty common in a law firm. So in a law firm setting, you might want to keep a pen on you to be prepared to write things down that you might forget. So what are the issues you're supposed to look at? Is there a client file? That's a good question to ask. What's the due date? Or when should we meet next? What's the length of this assignment or the approximate hours? What if your client, what if the client has only approved a certain number of hours and, you end up spending weeks and then it's not billable? What's the form of the assignment? Are you turning in a memo? Is it just some notes? That sort of thing. Any sample to look at for this type of assignment? So maybe you go onto your law firm's network and try to find a sample, or maybe your supervising attorney might have a sample. Who's the client? Is there a matter number? Any suggestions regarding research steps or sources? And so, busy supervising attorney might not think to give you all this information, and so it might be helpful if you remember to ask for these sorts of things. Okay, so reporting. So here's some big picture ideas. So as I mentioned, schedule as instructed by your professor. Second bullet, bring a copy of your research work, assignment 3, for reference during your meeting, and your LARC professor may collect these at conferences. Make sure to do your own work on assignment 3, and your group can decide how to present at the meeting, but the research and the upcoming memo, this is individual work. So figure out which ideas each student in the group will present, but generally do your own work. Next, focus on reporting to supervising attorney. What legal sources and arguments can you bring to the table? This is how you score points. So we're going to talk more about reporting. And so along those lines, questions can be okay, time permitting, but first you want to score your points. Your supervising attorney is relying on you to offer some helpful insights. Okay, so reporting to supervisor, think about the expectations. Are you supposed to provide a full memo at the meeting, a brief memo, a quick summary, some notes? And, given that we're meeting next week, I think finding helpful law and brainstorming helpful arguments is a good goal. And so you look at assignment 3 and do what you have to do, describe your research plan and provide your research results and so forth. And of course the goal is to give an analysis of the law and how it applies to the client facts. So this is a group conference, and so you have to think about working with your peers, working with other associates in a law firm. And you will work with others in law practice. Can't get away from that. Preparation for conferences. So after researching, you find relevant statutes, case law, talk to or email your group members. Decide if you think that you agree with each other's research. Maybe you have to do some more research, so schedule a time to talk, maybe check in a couple times. Now at the conferences, agree on the topics with your associates, who's going to talk about what. And be prepared to report your prediction. I hope you have a prediction on the issues. Now if somebody disagrees on the ultimate, how you think a court's going to hold on the issues, you might have the majority speak first and then the outlier opposing view after that. Be prepared to ask questions. You might have some questions. Also be prepared to answer questions. Your professor might ask you some things about the law. So ideas here. Be prepared. Be on time. You want to keep your job, if this were your job. decide ahead of time, so do some planning. Which associate will cover specific issues. Don't all talk at once. Don't interrupt each other. Be polite. It's just good professionalism. If you don't know the answer to a question, tell a supervising attorney. I'll look into it and get back to you. I'll get back to you with a memo. How about that? After the meeting, maybe you research that issue that you didn't have the answer to. So again, assign groups and times, check your professor's instructions. So again, reporting to supervisor, your objective is to score points. And how do I score points? The short answer is report. That sounds like a military command, ensign, report. So asking questions later can be okay, but you need to provide value. And so how do you report? Well, bring some answers to questions like this. What's a helpful case? What's a helpful rule? What client facts seem important? Any case facts that line up or facts that seem very different? What's a helpful argument on one side? Is there some possible argument on the other side of some issue? And then who do you think might ultimately win on the issue and why? So, again, these are the types of issues to show your progress. All right, so what if I'm stuck? Sometimes you get stuck with the legal analysis and you're unsure of who should ultimately win. Maybe an issue looks debatable, there's competing arguments on either side, therefore it's confusing. And what can you do to provide value? And so possible solutions, in all likelihood, your professor gave you an issue to look at. Look up this issue. So at a minimum, you can discuss a case that appears relevant, maybe a controlling case, and answer some or all these questions about the case. What's the rule for the issue that you were given? You can do that. Even if you don't know the answer, you can do that. What happened in that case and what was the conclusion and key reasoning? Maybe point out some similarities or differences from that particular case, and maybe you could do the same thing with another case that has an opposite conclusion. Think about similar questions. And again, it might take you a couple weeks to get to that ultimate conclusion and really feel confident in it. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know. But at least you can make some progress and provide some value at this meeting, even if you're stuck. And, again, it's okay not to have the ultimate answer right away if it's a tough issue. And it can be very helpful to say, well, I don't have the ultimate answer, but here's what I think is a good argument on plaintiff's side, on our client side or whatever, good argument on the other side. And if you have a theory for which side you think might win, that's even better. And keep in mind, if you have a tricky issue, 2 trial court judges could look at a similar case and reach different conclusions. I've seen that. And, a brief story, I had a former student call me up a few years ago, and he said, I've been working at my firm for a while. They gave me a really tough issue to look at. And he said, I did not have a clear answer. And he said, look, I followed your advice. And he said, okay, I listed out the strongest arguments on the client side. I listed out the strongest arguments on the defendant side. I told the partners of my firm, there's no clear answer here as far as I can tell, but here's what we could argue, and here's what the other side could argue. And it turned out that, the partners at his firm said, hey, we really like that. We like that you didn't just get stuck, analysis paralysis. You were able to approach us and provide some value in terms of arguments on either side and some kind of game plan for moving forward. So this is the norm for tough issues. So again, the schedule, which I talked about in the other video, but I'll say it again. So next week there's no class, and I'll be sending out a Google Doc with a schedule, and you'll have to keep an eye out. If you have a different LARC professor, look out for D2L content and any emails in terms of assignments and scheduling instructions. Remember the Blue Book quiz. Like I said, I think week 5 I'll do a research exercise that I'm probably not going to cover this week unless I have some creative D2L solution. And bring laptop in week 6, I'll remind you of that. So yes, okay, so again, next week you'll meet with LARC professor. Week 5 memo workshop. Bring your work in progress memo for reference, and also show up with some questions about your memo that you're working on. And bring your laptops, as I will probably provide a research exercise, like I said, that I can't do this week on account of class cancellation. Week 6, we will shift to persuasive writing, and your memo is due. So remember, 3-week turnaround time on this memo. Of course, I'll put that in my written instructions for the memo assignment. Okay, thank you.